Blood is supposed to be thicker than water, but apparently, it's not thicker than a perfectly curated bridal aesthetic. When my own sister banished me to eat next to the dirty dish racks on her wedding day, I didn't just quietly leave. I took her entire wedding with me. If you want to understand how I ended up standing in a greasy service corridor in a formal gown, you have to understand the Hastings family dynamic. In our house, there was the golden child, and then there was me. My older sister, Vanessa, was born to be the center of attention. She was a former pageant girl, effortlessly charismatic, and had a way of making our parents, Cynthia and Robert, bend to her every whim. I, Chloe, was the reliable one. In parent speak, reliable translates directly to the one we don't have to worry about and therefore can completely ignore. I was a project manager for a tech firm, practical, organized, and fiercely loyal to my family, a loyalty that Vanessa exploited with surgical precision. When Vanessa got engaged to Carter Reynolds, a mid-level finance bro with a superiority complex and a trust fund, my parents wept with joy. I was happy for her too. I genuinely was. I thought a wedding would be a beautiful family milestone. I had no idea it was going to be an 18-month hostage situation. From the moment the ring slipped onto her finger, Vanessa transformed from a mildly demanding sister into a full-blown bridal tyrant. And because she and Carter blew through their massive wedding budget within the first 6 months, mostly on a custom designer gown and importing rare orchids from New Zealand, the grunt work fell to me. "You're so good at organizing, Chloe," my mother, Cynthia, told me over coffee one morning, subtly sliding a massive binder across the table. "Vanessa is just so overwhelmed. It would mean the world to us if you could help coordinate the vendors." Help coordinate actually meant become the unpaid, full-time wedding planner. For a year, I spent my evenings and weekends managing Fiona, the high-strung florist, negotiating with caterers, and hand-folding 300 velvet napkin rings because Vanessa saw them on Pinterest and absolutely had to have them. I poured my own money into the event too. When the deposit for the string quartet was due and Carter's card mysteriously declined, I put $2,500 on my own credit card. "I'll pay you back on Monday, Chloe," Vanessa had breezed, waving a manicured hand. Monday never came, and whenever I brought it up, my father would pull me aside and say, "Don't stress your sister out right now, Chloe. This is her special time." Despite the financial drain and the exhaustion, I kept my head down. I was supposed to be the maid of honor. But 3 months before the wedding, the first major twist happened. Vanessa called a bridal summit at her apartment. She sat me down, flanked by Carter and her 3 sorority sisters, and delivered the blow with a practiced, sympathetic smile. "Chloe, I love you so much," she began, reaching out to squeeze my hand. "But Carter and I have been looking at the visual balance of the bridal party. His groomsmen are all, well, they're all very tall and lean. And since you've put on a little weight since we bought the dresses," the tailor said, "altering yours would change the silhouette of the lineup." I sat there, stunned. I had gained exactly 5 pounds. "We think it would be better if you stepped down as maid of honor," Carter chimed in, adjusting his Rolex. "You'll still be a guest, obviously, but this way the photos will look symmetrical." I looked at my sister, waiting for her to tell him to shut up. Instead, she nodded eagerly. "It actually works out perfectly. This way, you won't be tied down with bridesmaid duties, and you can focus entirely on making sure the reception runs smoothly behind the scenes. We really need you on the ground, Chloe." I should have walked away right then. I should have handed over the vendor binder, canceled the string quartet, and washed my hands of the whole affair. But the guilt trip from my parents was immediate and suffocating. My mother cried, accusing me of trying to ruin Vanessa's day out of jealousy. So, swallowing my pride and my anger, I stayed. I bought a plain, understated navy dress, stepped out of the spotlight, and continued to run the show from the shadows. I thought that was the worst it could get. I was wrong. The wedding day arrived in a flurry of stress and frantic phone calls. The venue was the Waverly Estate, a breathtaking, sprawling historic mansion with manicured gardens and a grand ballroom that screamed old money. While Vanessa spent 6 hours in the bridal suite sipping mimosas and getting airbrushed, I was sprinting across the grounds in my navy dress, putting out fires. The catering staff was late, the ice sculpture was melting, and Carter's groomsmen had smuggled in whiskey and were entirely uncooperative. I didn't sit down once. I didn't eat. I didn't even get to watch the ceremony properly. because I was at the back of the garden ensuring the string quartet, the one I paid for, knew exactly when to start playing. But the ceremony was beautiful. When Vanessa and Carter said their vows, I felt a lump in my throat. I told myself that the months of disrespect, the unpaid labor, and the humiliation of being kicked out of the bridal party were worth it to see my family this happy. After the cocktail hour, the heavy oak doors to the grand ballroom were opened. The guests, about 200 of them, began filing in to find their seats. I lingered at the back, paying the coat check attendant with my own cash because Carter had forgotten to tip him. Finally, taking a deep breath, I walked over to the towering, elegant glass seating chart to find my name. I scanned the head table: Vanessa, Carter, the groomsmen, the perfectly symmetrical bridesmaids. I scanned table 1, the immediate family table: Cynthia, Robert, Carter's parents, and Vanessa's godparents. I frowned. My name wasn't there. I scanned table 2, table 3, table 4. Nothing. My heart started to beat a little faster. Did they forget to seat me? I moved down the list. Tables 5 through 12 were extended family and Carter's fraternity brothers. Still no Chloe Hastings. Finally, at the very bottom corner of the glass, I found it. Chloe Hastings, table 14. Table 14? I looked out at the sprawling ballroom. The tables were arranged in 2 elegant half-moons around the dance floor, numbered 1 through 12. There was no table 13 due to superstition, and from where I stood, there was no table 14 either. Confused, I flagged down the catering captain, a kind woman named Maria whom I had been coordinating with for months. "Maria, I'm sorry. Where is table 14? I asked. Maria looked at her clipboard, then looked up at me, her expression instantly shifting to one of profound pity. "Chloe, are you at table 14? "Yes. Where is it?" Without a word, Maria gently touched my arm and led me away from the sparkling chandeliers and the sweeping floral centerpieces of the main ballroom. She led me to the back wall, where heavy velvet curtains concealed the entrance to the service and catering corridors. She pushed through the swinging wooden doors. The noise of the kitchen hit me like a physical blow. The clanking of pots, the shouting of line cooks, the hiss of industrial dishwashers. And there, tucked into a small alcove right next to the dirty dish drop-off station, was a small, wobbly aluminum card table. It was covered with a cheap, wrinkled white linen. A single, unlit tea light sat in the middle. Next to the tea light was a beautifully calligraphed place card that read, "Chloe Hastings." I stared at it. The air smelled like stale garbage and bleached floors. Waiters were rushing past, carelessly tossing half-eaten plates of appetizers onto the metal racks just 3 feet from my chair. "I assumed this was for a vendor," Maria whispered, looking horrified. "A photographer, maybe." "Chloe, I am so sorry." A cold, icy calm washed over me. I wasn't just seated at the back of the room. I was hidden, banished, concealed out of sight like an embarrassing family secret, right next to the literal garbage. I turned on my heel and marched back into the ballroom. The guests were taking their seats. The lights were dimming for the grand entrance. I spotted my mother, Cynthia, holding court at table 1. "Mom," I said, my voice dangerously low. "A word. Now." She sighed, annoyed at the interruption, but followed me into the foyer. "What is it, Chloe? The grand entrance is about to happen. Why am I seated in the kitchen?" I asked, my voice trembling despite my best efforts. My mother had the audacity to roll her eyes. "Oh, for heaven's sake, keep your voice down. It's not the kitchen, it's the overflow alcove. It is next to the dishwashers, Mom. There is no one else at the table. Why am I not at table 1 with you and Dad?" Cynthia crossed her arms. Carter's boss, Mr. Sterling, she caught herself, Mr. Davenport, decided to come at the last minute. He brought his wife. They needed premium seating. "You're constantly up and down checking on the vendors anyway, Chloe. It makes sense for you to be out of the way. Plus, you're single. It's easier to move one person than a couple. You gave my seat to Carter's boss?" I felt my chest tighten. "I planned this wedding. I paid for the music you're listening to right now. And you threw me in the trash room?" Before my mother could answer, the double doors of the bridal suite opened, and out stepped Vanessa and Carter, preparing for their grand entrance. Vanessa looked stunning, radiant, and utterly unbothered. I walked right up to her. "Vanessa, Table 14. Explain it. Vanessa sighed, shooting a panicked look at Carter. Chloe, please don't do this right now. You know we're tight on space. You have 200 guests in there, I hissed. You couldn't find one chair for your sister? Carter stepped forward, puffing out his chest. Look, Chloe, you're not in the bridal party, and you didn't fit the aesthetic for the family table. Your dress is, well, it's a little plain for the front row photos. Just go sit down and eat your free meal. Stop making Vanessa's day about you. Your free meal. Stop making it about you. I looked at Carter's smug face. I looked at Vanessa, who was avoiding my eyes, adjusting her diamond earrings. I looked at my mother, who was waving me away like a pesky fly. For 26 years, I had swallowed my pride. I had been the good sister, the reliable daughter, the unpaid servant. Snap. Something inside me, some rusted, exhausted chain of familial obligation, finally broke. You're right, I said quietly. The sudden shift in my tone made all three of them pause. It's your day, Vanessa. I shouldn't be in the way. Vanessa smiled, visibly relieved. Thank you, Chloe. Just check on the cake cutting at 9. Okay? Oh, I won't be here at 9, I replied, stepping back. In fact, I'm leaving right now. Have a great reception. My mother scoffed. Chloe, stop being dramatic. Go back to your table. I am leaving, I repeated, my voice echoing slightly in the quiet foyer. And I'm taking the wedding with me. Carter laughed out loud. What does that even mean? You're delusional. Go wait in the kitchen. I didn't answer him. I turned around, pulled my phone from my clutch, and started dialing. The golden child wanted a perfect aesthetic. She was about to find out exactly how ugly things get when the invisible servant goes on strike. I didn't run out to my car and cry. I didn't dramatically flee the venue in tears, leaving them to their perfect, symmetrical evening. As a project manager, I was trained to handle critical system failures by cutting off the compromised power supply. And in this situation, I was the power supply. I walked straight past the foyer, ignoring my mother's frantic hissing, and re-entered the grand ballroom. The lights were dimmed to a romantic ambient glow, and a low murmur of anticipation rippled through the 200 seated guests. At the front of the room, perched on a slightly elevated stage, was DJ Leo. I marched up the side stairs. Leo, a college student who was doing this gig to pay off his loans, looked up from his mixing board. Hey, Chloe, he whispered, pulling one headphone off. We're 2 minutes to the grand entrance. You need me to announce them? Actually, Leo, I said, keeping my voice steady. I need the microphone, and then I need you to pack up your gear. Leo blinked, thoroughly confused. Pack up? But the party hasn't started. I know, but I paid your final balance yesterday morning when Carter's transfer didn't clear, right? Leo nodded slowly. Yeah, you did. Sent it straight through Venmo. Then you work for me tonight, and I am officially canceling the reception. I held out my hand. Mike, please. He didn't argue. He handed me the sleek wireless microphone and stepped back. I stood at the edge of the stage. Below me, a sea of faces, aunts, uncles, cousins, family, friends, and Carter's rowdy fraternity brothers chattered away, entirely oblivious to the chaos brewing behind the velvet curtains. I took a deep breath, flipped the switch, and tapped the mic. Thump, thump. The sound echoed through the massive ballroom, and a hush fell over the crowd. 200 faces turned toward me. At table 1, I saw my father, Robert, frown in confusion, while Carter's boss, Mr. Davenport, adjusted his glasses, looking intrigued. Good evening, everyone, I started, my voice projecting crisp and clear through the venue's premium sound system. For those who don't know me, my name is Chloe Hastings. I am the bride's older sister. I was supposed to be the maid of honor, but I was removed from the bridal party a few months ago because my dress size didn't fit the visual aesthetic for the photos. A collective, audible gasp rippled across the room. I saw my Aunt Martha, my mother's older, deeply cynical sister, drop her fork onto her porcelain plate with a sharp clink. Instead of standing beside my sister, I spent the last year working as her unpaid wedding planner. I continued, pacing slowly across the stage. I managed the vendors, folded your napkins, organized the seating chart, and personally financed several elements of tonight's reception because the bride and groom blew their budget on custom floral arrangements. The silence in the room was now absolute, heavy, and suffocating. Despite all of this, I was happy to do it. I love my family, I said, looking directly at my father, who had gone completely pale. But a few minutes ago, I went to find my seat. I am not seated at the family table. I am not seated with the extended family. In fact, to make room for VIP guests, my sister and her new husband decided to place my table 14 behind the velvet curtains in the service corridor, directly next to the industrial dishwashers and the garbage drop-off. Murmurs of shock broke out. I saw heads swiveling toward the back of the room, looking for table 14. So, I have made an executive decision, I announced, raising my voice to cut through the rising chatter. Since I paid the deposits for the open bar, the string quartet, the midnight food trucks, and the DJ, I am officially pulling my funding. The bar is now closed. The music is off. I paused, letting the reality of a dry, silent wedding wash over the crowd. However, I added, offering a bright, genuine smile, I have just opened a massive tab at the Garrison Tavern, which is exactly 3 blocks down the street. It's got a great patio, plenty of seating, and nobody will put you in a kitchen closet. If anyone would prefer to spend the evening drinking premium liquor and eating proper pub food on my dime, you are more than welcome to join me. Thank you, and good night. I handed the microphone back to a completely stunned DJ Leo, turned off the stage, and walked down the center aisle. For 3 seconds, nobody moved. Then, Aunt Martha stood up. She grabbed her sequined clutch, looked at my father, and said loudly, I always told Cynthia she was raising a spoiled brat. Robert, you should be ashamed of yourself. She turned to her husband. Come on, David. I need a gin and tonic, and I'm not paying for it. That was the spark that blew the powder keg. Once Aunt Martha moved, her 2 sons and their wives stood up. Then my cousins from my father's side followed. The Hastings family loyalty broke, shattering under the weight of sheer embarrassment and the promise of free alcohol. But the real twist? Carter's friends, finance bros and fraternity alumni, are not known for their sentimental attachment to wedding aesthetics. They are known for their attachment to open bars. When they realized the liquor had been cut off at the Waverly estate, a mass exodus began. Bro, free drinks at the Garrison, I heard one of the groomsmen mutter to another, completely abandoning his loyalty to Carter. By the time I reached the grand double doors at the back of the ballroom, the scraping of chairs was deafening. I pushed through the doors and walked out into the cool evening air, not looking back. I wasn't there to witness the physical manifestation of my revenge, but Maria, the catering captain who had taken pity on me, texted me a minute-by-minute play-by-play. According to her, the mass exodus was a sight to behold. It wasn't just a slow trickle, it was a stampede of silk, chiffon, and tailored suits. It took exactly 8 minutes for the Waverly Estates Grand Ballroom to completely empty out. Out of 200 guests, a staggering 175 chose the promise of a fully funded tab at a local pub over a dry, awkward reception. The only souls left behind were my horrified parents, Carter's immediate family, a handful of confused elderly relatives who couldn't walk that far, and Thomas Davenport, who Maria noted sat quietly at his table, sipping a water, watching the chaos unfold like an interactive theater performance. At exactly 7:15 p.m., the MC, who had been hiding in the restroom and was blissfully unaware that he was now presiding over a ghost town, queued up the entrance music. Over the house speakers, he enthusiastically boomed, Ladies and gentlemen, for the first time as husband and wife, please welcome Carter and Vanessa Reynolds. The heavy oak doors swung open with a dramatic flourish. Vanessa, radiant in her custom silk gown, and Carter, flashing his practiced million-dollar finance smile, strutted into the ballroom. They paused, waiting for the thunderous applause, the flashing cameras, and the standing ovation. Instead, they walked into a cavernous, echoing void. Table after table sat abandoned. The carefully hand-folded velvet napkins were tossed haphazardly onto chairs. The massive dance floor was nothing but polished wood reflecting the expensive floral centerpieces. DJ Leo had completely vanished, taking his mixing board and cables with him, leaving the MC's singular voice to bounce off the walls. The silence was absolute, broken only by the distant clatter of the kitchen staff and the uncomfortable coughing of Carter's grandfather. Maria said Vanessa stopped dead in her tracks, her smile freezing onto her face, before she let out a piercing, hysterical shriek that vibrated through the crystal chandeliers. Carter immediately began screaming for the venue manager, demanding to know where the bartender was, only to be politely informed that the financial backer had revoked the contract. The bartender had clocked out and gone home. Meanwhile, 3 blocks down the street, the Garrison Tavern was experiencing the most profitable, chaotic Saturday night in its storied history. I had commandeered a massive corner booth, surrounded by my cousins, and I was laughing harder than I had in over a year. The mood was absolutely electric. It felt less like a wedding reception and more like a victory parade. Aunt Martha, the true MVP of the night, was holding court at the bar, buying me rounds of premium tequila and loudly toasting to the only Hastings with a spine. Even Carter's groomsmen had showed up. Finance bros and fraternity alumni are fiercely loyal to one thing, and it isn't their buddies' marital bliss, it's an open bar. They had torn off their restrictive ties, rolled up their sleeves, and were buying towering platters of loaded nachos, openly mocking Carter for being foolish enough to cross the person holding the literal credit card. Strangers in the pub were buying me drinks after hearing the story. It wasn't the formal, symmetrical, aesthetically perfect reception my sister had planned, but it was, without a doubt, a genuinely incredible party. The fallout was swift and biblical. By 8 p.m., my phone was vibrating off the table with a barrage of frantic text messages. Mom, Chloe Hastings, you have ruined your sister's life. How could you do this to us? You humiliated Carter. Come back here right now and fix the bar. The Davenports are still here. Vanessa, I hate you. You are a jealous, bitter monster. You ruined my wedding. You owe us for this. I didn't reply. I didn't cry, and I didn't feel a single ounce of guilt. I simply took a screenshot of the messages, put my phone on airplane mode, ordered a massive plate of garlic fries, and went back to celebrating my newfound freedom. The twists, however, didn't end there. The real world has a funny way of delivering karma without you even having to lift a finger. On Monday morning, I finally turned my phone back on to deal with the inevitable family fallout. But before I could brace myself to call my father, I opened my inbox and found an email from an unfamiliar address. The signature read, Thomas Davenport, Managing Director, Carter's boss. The email was brief, formal, but incredibly satisfying to read. Dear Chloe, my wife and I were in attendance on Saturday. While the evening was highly unconventional, I was deeply impressed by your public speaking, your crisis management, and your absolute refusal to be undervalued. Carter has always struggled with team management and resource allocation in our office, and after seeing how he and his bride treat the people holding their infrastructure together, it explains a great deal. I see from your LinkedIn profile that you are a senior project manager. We are currently searching for a director of operations at our firm. If you are open to a conversation, my assistant will reach out to schedule a lunch. Best, Thomas. Carter had strategically invited his boss to the wedding to show off his elite social status and network his way into a massive promotion. Instead, he completely exposed his lack of judgment, his cruelty, and his financial irresponsibility. When Carter returned from his lavish, aesthetic-focused honeymoon, which he had to finance on a high-interest credit card because they received zero cash gifts from the guests who walked out, he was not greeted with the promotion he had been bragging about. Instead, he was quietly, laterally transferred to a lower visibility, dead-end department. As for me, I took the lunch meeting with Mr. Davenport. 2 weeks later, I signed a contract as their new director of operations, complete with a 40% pay raise and a beautiful corner office. My relationship with my family completely fractured after that night, but looking back, there wasn't much of a foundation to begin with. My mother eventually called, demanding I pay Vanessa back for the severe emotional damage of ruining her wedding photos. I didn't argue. I calmly typed up and mailed my mother an itemized invoice for $8,400, the exact total of the vendor deposits, the string quartet, my unpaid hours of event planning calculated at my professional hourly rate, and the massive bar tab at the Garrison. I attached a sticky note that read, "If you ever contact me again, without this check in hand, I will involve a lawyer." They never paid it, and I kept my promise. I haven't spoken to Vanessa, Carter, or my parents in over 2 years. Sometimes, setting a boundary is as simple as looking at a table next to a trash can, realizing your worth, and taking your credit card down the street. I lost my family that night, but for the first time in my life, I found myself. Family loyalty shouldn't mean sacrificing your own dignity, and being the reliable one doesn't make you a doormat. If you've ever had to stand up to toxic family members or pull the plug on a one-sided relationship, let me know in the comments below. I want to read your stories. If you enjoyed this slice of wedding drama and sweet revenge, please hit that like button, share this video with a friend, and subscribe for more wild real-life story times.